There we go. What is going on, everybody? Just want to make sure that we are up and ready. Hey, praise the Lord, Sister Maricela. Good to see you on here. Trying to make sure all my audio is good. A lot of trying to make sure it's not too loud in my own ears. But yeah, so just wanted to hop on here in preparation for the new year, and just wanted to look back at. Let me take these out. Just wanted to look back at 2021, and maybe I'll pop one in. Look back at 2021 and kind of see where we've been, and look at 2020 as well, kind of reflect on 2020, 2021, and go back and look and then see where we're at in God's timeline and where we're going to be at. So let us look at that. So one of the first things, let me see, let me pull it up here if I can get it all going properly. Where are we at? So one of the first things was just kind of reflecting on from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and we're going to cover just some news events, some national things, some global things, and then we'll get to God's perspective, because 2022, from God's perspective, isn't going to show any signs of slowing down. And so as believers, we definitely need to make sure our hearts are prepared, that our hearts are ready, and that, let me take this out because it's so distracting. But make sure our hearts are prepared and our hearts are ready for the things that are coming, because we don't want to be caught unaware, and that's why God gave us His word in the first place, so that way we wouldn't be caught unaware. So one of the first things I wanted to kind of look at was, let me see, where is, no, oh, perhaps I am in the wrong browser. So let me pull this up for you guys. The first thing I was looking at was this, which is 2021 in review, and it was talking about just some of the different events throughout the year. And let me see, supply chain, and I think I was looking at this one, 10 most significant world events in 2021. So I'll pull this up. I'll kind of monitor my comments from here. Let me see. Let me pop out my chat real quick so that way I can see who all is on here, and I don't get lost. Totally lost anyway. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. So 10 most significant world events in 2021. I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights. So here we have the AUKUS deal, which was a partnership between us and Australia, as it says. President Joe Biden, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Australia is essentially a colony of Great Britain. So Australia falls under the government of Great Britain. And so they made this deal in order to stand against China. But let's kind of read through it. It says, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson jointly announced a new trilateral security partnership named AUKUS. And if you want to know this source, this is the Council of Foreign Relations.org. This is a kind of a national source, governmental source. CFR is the Council of Foreign Relations. So it is the governmental body that develops a foreign policy, and of course that foreign policy is based on those who are behind the scenes. A lot of those people in the Council of Foreign Relations, they are non-elected officials. So we, they have their own, what's the word I'm looking for? Their own agendas, essentially. So, Council of Foreign Relations. Let me see. Where am I at? Where are you guys at? All right, so it says the most significant part of the deal was the U.S. pledge to provide Australia with technology to build 8 nuclear-powered but not nuclear-armed submarines. The only other country to receive similar access to U.S. technology is the U.K. And then right here, and this is where, that's what I wanted to jump down to. It says, although none of these 3 leaders mentioned China by name, AUKUS was widely seen as a response to the growing Chinese assertiveness. Not surprisingly, Beijing denounced the pact. Hopefully you guys can see it. Denounced the pact as extremely irresponsible and polarizing. But China wasn't the only country unhappy with the deal. France fumed because AUKUS terminated a $37 billion agreement it struck with Australia in 2016 to build a dozen diesel-powered subs. As a result, Paris recalled its ambassadors to Canberra and Washington, a move without precedent in bilateral relations with either country. So the AUKUS deal, so we see it dealt with both China and France, and we see that France withdrew its ambassadors both from here and from Australia, and this is just kind of that global tension, and we're going to talk about that coming from Jesus' perspective in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. So going back to this, so that was the AUKUS deal. Migration crisis tests rich countries. So this is dealing with the migration crisis specifically, I would say, here in America, where we, once we had this new administration come in, just people from all types of countries, not just South America, but people were finding ways to get to South America, and they were making their way up to the American-Mexican border. And if you go back and you read the reports, they're getting people from the Middle East, they're getting people from Africa, anybody who can, they're trying to get to this country for whatever the reason. Some religious persecution, and then I think most for some sake of freedoms that they don't get in their home countries. So that's where we find ourselves when it comes to this migration crisis. It says the downturn in international migration flows in 2020, triggered by COVID-19, continued into 2021. That didn't translate, however, into the end of migration crisis. A case in point was the southern U.S. border. By October, the number of people entering the United States illegally had hit 1.7 million over the prior year, the highest number since 1960. COVID-19, economic hardship, and political and natural events, the assassination of Haiti's president, and a subsequent earthquake sent thousands of Haitians abroad during the surge. But so too did the expectation that the Biden administration would be more welcoming than the Trump administration. To stem the inflow of the migrants, the Biden administration continued many of its predecessors' harsh immigration policies, where it didn't, the Supreme Court ordered it to. The EU, the European Union, saw a 70% rise compared to 2020 in the number of people entering illegally, with critics arguing that the EU was failing its duty to help migrants. a surge in migrants crossing the English Channel from France triggered a diplomatic row between Paris and London. Meanwhile, Belarus encouraged migrants to cross its territory into Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland in a bid to pressure the EU to end sanctions and impose to protest the rigid 2020 Belarusian presidential election. These crises are likely to lead to let up in coming years, or unlikely, sorry. Some 84 million people around the world have been forcibly displaced from their homes. Conflict, economic collapse, and climate change are likely to drive that number higher. So worldwide, we see a migration crisis from the countries that are underdeveloped to those that are probably very well overdeveloped, overdeveloped to the point to where we are gluttonous and very neglectful of those who are actually in need of help. And so here it says that the migration crisis tests the richer countries. So that's one thing we don't, at least where I'm at, we don't necessarily see the total effects of it yet, but in bigger countries or bigger cities, I'm sure they are feeling it, especially with the rise in crime in a lot of the places, San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles. If you've frequented or visited any of those cities, you also see the growing homelessness and those mentally ill on the streets because just all that COVID has done, bringing up people's stress levels and things like that. So when it comes to this migration crisis, we're, this is just adding to the global national issues. Iran's nuclear program advances. Hopefully I'll be able to get to, let me put this in my notes because I want to come back to this. Where's my pen at? Ooh. Let me see. I think it's Ezekiel 38, 39. So Iran's nuclear program advances. It says the year began with optimism that the Iran nuclear deal might be revived 3 years after President Trump quit the agreement. Joe Biden came to office calling Trump's Iran policy a self-inflicted disaster and pledging to return the deal if Iran returned to compliance. Making that happen was easier said than done. However, in February, the Biden administration accepted an invitation from the EU to rejoin negotiations. Diplomatic jockeying between Tehran and Washington delayed the start of talks until April. An explosion at an Iranian nuclear facility in mid-April, likely the result of Israeli sabotage, prompted Iran to announce it had begun enriching uranium to 60%, a level that has no civilian use, though it is below the threshold required for a weapon. So, just talking about Iran's nuclear program and advances, we're going to kind of talk on why that's important as well. And like I said, we're just kind of going over these significant things of 2021. Supply chain falters. So it says supply chains became a household term in 2021. For decades, businesses believed that outsourcing production was the key to success. That strategy worked. Companies that honed their supply chain saw their costs drop and profits rise. Then came COVID-19. It exposed the downside of supply chains. Shortages and stoppages far away create shortages and stoppages at home. Let me reread that last sentence. It exposed the downside of supply chains. Shortages and stoppages far away create shortages and stoppages at home. when the pandemic first hit, factories closed and many companies let inventories dwindle to avoid being stuck with unsold goods. But when consumer demand surged in 2021 as vaccines became available, many companies found themselves short on parts and supplies. Shortages of shipping containers and backups at ports around the world further complicated matters. It didn't help that in March, the container ship Ever Given ran aground in the Suez Canal, blocking one of the world's major waterways for a week and generating costs estimated to run $9.6 billion a day. The shortage that got the most attention was in computer chips, particularly those in gaming consoles and car production. Ford Motor Company projected it will lose 1.1 million vehicle sales in 2021 because of semiconductor shortages. Other goods in short supply in 2021 included gasoline, palm oil, chicken, corn, chlorine, and hot dogs. Even when supplies were abundant, labor was often in short supply in the U.S. alone. In the U.S. alone, the size of the workforce fell by 5 million people from the start of the pandemic. The supply chain disruptions caused by COVID-19, which have contributed to a worldwide surge in inflation, could linger for years. So the supply chain falters. So far, let's go back real quick. I want to look at these. So we got the AUKUS deal, which deals with China and France, the UK, Australia, and the United States. We got the migration crisis. We got Iran's nuclear program advances. Then we have the supply chain falters. The Taliban returns to power. This was the horrible withdrawal, according to some government officials, I guess. According to some, it was a successful withdrawal, but the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan. And this is the Council of Foreign Relations, like I said. It's supposed to be a quote-unquote government entity, but it's made up of people that are not elected officials. These are kind of, talk about like that elite group of people, the shadow government, so to say. This will be part of them because they groom people. They then get people that are elected. People that are elected go to the Council of Foreign Relations to get our administrative officials, those who are over different places within the government, such as foreign relations. And when you look at things like socialism and communism, if you get somebody who is a socialist, who has a socialistic mindset, well, you have this body, this group of people that's what they, that's like their incubator. The Council of Foreign Relations is just one of them. And so when we see our government going certain ways, I'm not so much for politics, but the ideology of it, when we see our government going with specific ideologies, is because we have these incubators, such as the Council on Foreign Relations. So interestingly, they're the ones talking about the Taliban returns to power, and so it says the U.S. war in Afghanistan ended as it started 20 years earlier with the Taliban in power in 2020. President Donald Trump struck a deal with the Taliban that required withdrawing all U.S. troops by May 1st. 2 weeks before that deadline, President Joe Biden ordered that a complete U.S. withdrawal would be concluded no later than September 11, 2021. The 20th anniversary of 9/11. As the withdrawal proceeded, the Afghanistan National Army collapsed and the Taliban overran the country. Kabul fell on August 15th, trapping thousands of foreigners in the capital city. It's funny they don't mention the Americans that were trapped there as well. The United States launched a massive effort to evacuate stranded Americans by August 31st. Oh yeah, there we go. So we left and we left our people behind. So we had our stranded Americans there who they were trying to get them out, it says, by August 31st, but we had already withdrawn. We should have got our people out first. The U.S. withdrawal ended on August 30th, leaving behind more than 100. I'm sure it was more than that. This is just what they're telling us. So, like it says here, let me kind of highlight this a bit further. So, there it goes. It says, the U.S. withdrawal ended on August 31st, leaving behind more than 100 U.S. citizens and as many as 300,000 Afghans who have qualified for expedited U.S. visas. The withdrawal, Biden called the withdrawal an extraordinary success. Most Americans disagreed with his public approval rating hitting new lows. Allied dignitaries called the withdrawal imbecilic and a debacle, among other things. The United States spent more than $2.3 trillion on Afghanistan over 2 decades, or roughly $300 million a day. That's interesting. For 20 years. More than 2,500 U.S. service members and 4,000 U.S. civilian contractors died in Afghanistan. Lord help us. The number of Afghans who lost their lives likely topped 170,000. Despite claiming to be different, the new Taliban government so far has looked and acted just like the one that horrified the world 20 years ago, and a massive humanitarian crisis looms. Oh my goodness. So just reading that just brings back, kind of brings back some horrors for anybody who may watch this later if you are unfamiliar with who I am. My name is Chris. This is Foundation Bible Studies, where we're seeking to help you connect with your Creator, Jesus Christ, both experientially and informationally by God's Word, just as much as we go to the news and try to get our information. Our Creator has let us know ahead of time all the things we're dealing with now and the things we're going to be dealing with, as well as the things we have already dealt with historically, both as a nation and globally. And as for myself, I served in the military for a little shy of 9 years, from 2003 to 2012. After that, I've been working in the mental health field since 2015. And I'm currently back in school to kind of further that aspect of education in the mental health field. So when it comes to Afghanistan was my last theater of deployment, as we did support operations to the ground troops. I was in the Navy. I was what we called an Airedale. I worked in the aviation field for the Navy. And so we spent 7-8 months on deployments over there, and to see this debacle happen with Afghanistan. I mean, you can go back and Google things, how the vets felt about all this, because we spent months and years away from our families, and it was like all for nothing. And then we left other Americans there, we left allies there. And kind of like, regardless of our political leanings in that regard, it just says right here, Biden called this an extraordinary success. It's successful when we have a terrorist government that takes over. It's successful when we leave our own when we leave fellow Americans there. It's successful when we leave people that have helped us in that country there for the last 2 decades. That's successful. And these are, people that, and I'm going to say we, it's people that we have chosen to put in office, that we voted in office. And then, thankfully it says most Americans disagreed, and his approval ratings hit new lows, and rightly so. And then it says allied dignitaries called the withdrawal imbecilic and a debacle, among other things. So with I this was I know for myself this was heartbreak because you know service members have died over there. There were we put our lives on the line, whether you're Army, Marines, Air Force, or Navy. Like we put our lives on the line for months and years at a time. I have one of my best friends. I believe he did a tour over there for at least 6 months, if I remember correctly. And just some of the things he had to deal with over there, working the ground. And then we had another brother who went over there, and he came back and developed some PTSD issues. He was in the Navy, might still be, but he was in the Navy, and he went over there and had to deal with mortars being shot into their camp or into their base, and just the PTSD he had to deal with. And those are just people I know personally, and I'm not, those just people I don't know, people that have suffered suffer loss of life, suffer loss of limbs. That's there's an echo. Ooh, okay. Let me check it. I thought there was an echo, but let me see. What about now? Is the echo gone? Hopefully. But just dealing with the loss of life that happened over there, it was very frustrating. Let me know how the sound is, if there's still an echo. Hopefully not. I'll turn off the desktop audio, so hopefully that help with the echo a bit. But yeah, so dealing with that was very frustrating. All right. Thank you, dear. My dear wife is watching. So yeah. So then you got Ethiopia civil war worsens. And it says Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was awarded 2019 Nobel Peace Prize. Oh yeah, so I gotta watch my desktop audio when I am live streaming. It says less than 2 years later, Ethiopia is embroiled in a bitter civil war, and this is one of the countries I pray for pretty often. Is the continent of Africa, praying for Ethiopia. I try to find like maps and things that are going to allow me to call out each country by name or things like that, because unfortunately the continent of Africa is notorious for just civil wars just throughout because of the ideologies, and it's it's a tragic thing, very tragic thing. So Ethiopia's civil war worsens. Trying to say that 2 times fast. And then number 4 says the global democratic erosion continues. The global erosion of democratic governance that has been underway since 2006 continued in 2021. The United States, long the champion of democracy, saw its peaceful transition of power disrupted for the first time in its history by the January 6th insurrection. That event, coupled with efforts in many red states to restrict voting rights and give legislatures the right to overturn election results, led to what was once unthinkable: the United States being named a backsliding democracy. It had plenty of company on that front. The government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi cracked down on critics, prompting Freedom House to downgrade India from free to partly free, and Reporters Without Borders to label it as one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists trying to do their job properly. So it's interesting that this is so interesting to see this come from the Council on Foreign Relations, because this is our own entity, and it's like it's crazy just to kind of know the background of the Council of Foreign Relations, because like I said, this was made up of people who are globalists. You look at like the Rockefeller families and things like that. These are people who are globalist minded people. These are one world minded people. We talk about like the world government. God talks about the world government that will be in the last days and the days leading up to his return in Jesus Christ. And just to kind of see this, it kind of blows my mind that I'm like, I want to make sure I save this article, but it's just interesting to read this in 2021. Um, so, uh, yeah, just kind of mind blowing. It says, we were named a backsliding democracy. That's interesting to me. But it says that we have plenty of company on that front. Um, so the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, this is, well, like I said, it's uh, India, the Indian government. And so in order for it, it's crazy just to think that we are part of that company when it comes to not have being a partly free country. That's crazy. That's crazy to me. I mean, we feel it for those of us who are choosing one side or the other. Um, it says that Freedom House downgraded India from free to partly free, and Reporters Without Borders to label it as one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists trying to do their job properly. Like that's mind blowing to me. That's mind blowing. Like, we are counted here in the United States, the what's supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave. Like, that's one of the things for me with being a veteran, that I picked up on, was learning to appreciate the freedoms that this country affords to us. Like, you go to other countries. I've been to other countries to where, you literally don't feel safe in the country. You literally don't feel safe walking the streets. I've been to countries in my last deployment in the Middle East where, because, well, I mean, it's unfortunately the Middle East countries that where they don't like Americans because of the whole 9/11 thing, and just kind of what people might say the more radicalized groups within Islamic countries that are willing to kidnap people and hold them hostage. Like, uh just to be in a country where you don't feel safe. I've been there, I mean, overseas on deployment. And then there are countries that we're connected to here in the United States that, such as Mexico. You go to parts of Mexico, and other countries I've heard about. But to think that, that we are counted along with countries like that, where we are counted as partly free, I think that says a lot. And this is coming from a publication from within our own nation. That says a lot to me about where our nation is. That, um, Reporters Without Borders label India as one of the world's most dangerous countries for journalists trying to do their jobs properly. That's mind blowing for me. That's mind blowing for me, because that kind of confirms exactly what's been said for quite a while now, last couple years at least. But um, that's not neither here nor there in regards to the political aspect. It's just mind blowing to see where we're at. Number 3, it says Joe Biden becomes president. America is back. Joe Biden made that point repeatedly in 2021. Let me get my water. Excuse me, y'all. He moved quickly upon taking office to fulfill his promise to strengthen relations with America's allies. He returned the United States to the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization. Renewed New START for 5 years. Sought to revive the Iran nuclear deal and ended U.S. support for offensive military operations in Yemen. These moves away from former President Trump's America's First policy drew applause overseas. Initial polls showed a sharp improvement in the U.S.'s image abroad. As the year progressed, however, many foreign capitals openly wondered just how different and how sustainable Biden's foreign policies were. On critical issues like China and trade, Biden's policies differed from his predecessors more in tone than in substance. Biden also alarmed many allies, especially Europe, with his penchant for unilateral action. He canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, withdrew from Afghanistan, supported a waiver of intellectual property rights for vaccines, and created AUKUS without significant consultations with critical partners. The bungled Afghanistan withdrawal, the clumsy AUKUS rollout, the slow pace of announcing ambassadors also raised doubts about the Biden administration's competence, which had been presumed to be its strength. With Biden's approval rating sinking at home, the odds improving, the Republicans will retake one or both houses of Congress in 2022 midterm elections. U.S. allies have to entertain the thought that the Trump and America First might return to the White House in 2025. Now, for myself personally, excuse me, I got coffee and water, trying to balance the two. Now, for myself personally, when it comes to what this says, let me go back to that. When it talks about kind of the return of the America First agenda, policy, whatever, let me see. That they're afraid it might return in 2025. For me, I'm like, I've kind of gotten over all the politics of it, because the more I see these things happening, the more I see these things taking place, it just reminds me how close we are to Jesus's return. Because the world, as we're going to find out, the world is in upheaval. So, you know, this doesn't surprise me at all in any way, shape, or form. So with that, let me see. Let me move my little window over. So yeah. So COVID-19 vaccines arrive as the virus mutates. The vaccines created to address the novel coronavirus may join the smallpox, polio, and measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines as major advances, in saving lives and diminishing morbidity or death. The speed with which COVID-19 vaccines were developed was stunning. Vaccines historically took 10 to 15 years. This says a lot to me right here. The speed, whether you agree or not, this we have to be able to be a thinking people. It says the speed at which COVID-19 vaccines were developed was stunning. Vaccines historically took 10 to 15 years to develop. The quickest any vaccine had been developed previously was 4 years. Was the 4 years it took to create the mumps vaccine. COVID-19 vaccines were created in less than a year. To me, that's sketchy. Regardless, I think that for me, that's just sketchy. Vaccines took historically 10 to 15 years. The quickest one was 4 years for the mumps. And we did it in less than a year. But we don't want to listen to anything anybody else has to say about the efficacy of the vaccine, because I personally know people that have taken the vaccine. I'm kind of glad I'm not monetized, because I'm sure this video will get struck down. But I know people who have taken the medication. I guess I'll have to start using that. And they have taken the medication, and they have still gotten really, really sick after they have taken this new medication for this new disease. And they're really, really sick. And it's like, but we don't hear about that on mainstream media. We don't hear about it. They say you're not going to get it as bad. Well, yeah. So, anyway. And and I'm not against it because I've taken medications before for diseases, and but this was totally not developed and not as much as it should. The quickest was 4 years. And so when our loved ones are negatively affected by this medication, who do we hold responsible? They're not going to hold, you can't go to the companies that made this medication because they have immunity. They have, what did they call it? They have immunity from responsibility, essentially. Um, Man, I forget there was a term for it. But you can't go and you can't sue the company for this medication because they have immunity from responsibility. So when our loved ones get sick and have adverse reactions from this medication, who do we go to? The government isn't. All they're telling us to do is take it, take it, take it, take it. And that we talk about. They say the last administration was more like Nazi Germany. Well, I'm pretty sure it was Nazi Germany that was forcing things on the world, and communist governments, they do that stuff. They force things on their people without the people's approval. Or now, as we're seeing, we're getting sold that this is good when our loved ones that we know of are negatively affected by this stuff. So COVID vaccines arrive. COVID vaccines were created in less than a year. Just as important, the COVID-19 vaccines work stunningly well. They say Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are a bit more than 90% effective, and I wonder if they'll tell you for how long that is for. More than 7.4 billion vaccine doses were administered in 184 countries in the first 11 months of 2021. So you got the vaccines. And number one, it says the number one most significant world event is countries fail the climate change challenge again. So these were the 10, according to the Council on Foreign Relations, 10 most significant events of 2021. The AUKUS deal. And then we get to the migration crisis that tests the richer countries. And then we get to Iran's nuclear program, which we're going to hit on. And then, let's see, supply chain crisis. Taliban returns to power. Middle Eastern issues. Ethiopia's civil war worsens. The democratic erosion continues because the end time government is going to be a socialistic government. It's not going to be a democratic government. At least probably poses a democratic government. Joe Biden becomes president. That's here for the U.S. COVID vaccines roll out, and number one was the climate change things. So with all that, we are going to look and see what our creator says about all this. Let us go. So Matthew chapter 24, and this should be pretty, well, kind of self-explanatory. But here, this is talking about Jesus predicts the destruction of the temple, and it gets into the signs of the end, the signs of the times and the end of the age. So let's kind of read through it. It says, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?'" Up here, and this is the New King James Version. I might switch to a different version for sake of clarity, depending on what we are talking about. Um, so it says, "Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the building of the temple. And Jesus said to them, 'Do you not see all these things? Assuredly, I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down.'" One of the things I am going to do is, let me see. I'm going to try to pull up a picture of the second holy temple. Let me see. Second Jewish holy temple. So you can see what Jesus was talking about, at least. Oh man, they got some better pictures up here. It's pretty nice. Let me pull these up for you guys. I'm gonna have to adjust this for you guys. Let me see. Hold on, give me one moment, guys. I'm gonna adjust this so you can kind of see exactly some of these pictures. Okay, so I think that's better. Let's try that. All right, so there we go. You kind of see here on the right, this is the second holy temple. I'm like, man, I actually want to download this picture, but it looks really nice. So Jesus, when he says that the second holy temple is going to be torn down, he is referring to this temple complex right here. If you can kind of see the smoke, man, you can't really see my, let me see if I can get my pointer to show up on here for you guys. I don't know if it'll allow me. No, it won't let me pull up my pointer. But if you can kind of see the background above where the smoke is, you see the skyline, you kind of see the rest of the city of Jerusalem. It was a very expansive city. Let me pull up another picture. So here's another picture. Now these are just models, scale models, just showing what the temple looked like and what Jesus was referring to. And he said that when you that the second holy temple was going to be torn down, and this is a massive thing. There's going to be another, a third Jewish holy temple built for our God, because we serve the same God. They just don't believe that Jesus was our God, who came down as a man, or who created himself a human life. So when we look at where's my not logos, sorry guys, when we look at what Jesus is talking about, this is what he's talking about. He says, "Then Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said to them, 'Do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down.'" Signs of the times and the end of the age. It says, "Now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, 'Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?'" The age is talking about the end of this time period. When we talk about age as humans, we're talking about a time period. So we ask in Spanish, how many years does a person have? ¿Cuántos años tienes? Or, what is their age on the when you fill out an application? What is the age? What is your age? What is your child's age? What is your loved one's age? So it's talking about a time period. What time period is that person in? They are in their 7th year of life, their 18th year of life, their 36th year of life. So when we're talking about age, we're talking about a time period. If you're reading King James, I'm gonna pull that up for us real quick just so we can see what what it says. So it says right here. So older English a little bit, but this is why reading King James along with a newer translation, maybe if you have a parallel Bible, is good, because it says, "What will be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world?" And this is very telling, because when we look at the King James English versus New King James, we see older King James says "end of the world," and this is where we unfortunately get the understanding of that the world is just going to, like, the Lord is just going to totally disintegrate the earth, or whatever our concepts are of the end of the world. It's not talking about the end of planet Earth. It's talking about the end of this time period. The end of, you know, if we were to ask the Lord about our age, or about our individual ages, we would probably ask, what is the end of my age? What is the end of my time period? Not that he would necessarily tell us, but he would say the end of your age, Chris. If he was to tell me the day of my death, he would say, "Oh, I'm 36. Let me give myself another 10 years." He would say the end of your age is going to be at 46. That's the end of your age. That's the end of your time period. So when we look at that's what it's referring to here. And what will be the sign of thy coming, of the end of the world? But when we get to more clarified English, it is, what is the end of the age? So it says, "What will be the sign of your coming, of the end of the age?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "Take heed that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will deceive many." So we have to be careful about the voices we're listening to. Not every Christian teacher or preacher, pastor, minister is sent from God, and we'll try to hit on that. See what Jesus had to say about that. "And you will hear of wars and rumors of wars." One of the things that I wanted to hit on, which I forgot to bring up let me see if I pulled it up, was, I don't think I did. No, but I wanted to talk about, like, where am I at? I want to talk about, kind of like, you look at Russia and their aggression towards Ukraine, and how they're just very aggressive overall, asserting their power. You look at China. We talked about the AUKUS deal, because China is becoming more aggressive towards Taiwan. It's becoming more aggressive. It overtook Hong Kong in 2020, which was kind of democratically free. Even though it was part of China, it still had this freedom, this autonomy to it, because it was a British colony for quite some time. And so when we look at wars and rumors of wars, these are things that we need to be watchful for and paying attention to. So let me see. "For many will come in my name, and will deceive many, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars." Let's keep going. "See that you are not troubled." So this is why I was doing this live stream, because Jesus says, "See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet." And he's not talking to unbelievers. He is talking to believers. He is talking to disciples. So we need to be very aware of what's going on. And this is why, the Lord raises up teachers and things, so that everybody can benefit. I don't read. I'm not supposed to read and study for my own benefit. I am supposed to benefit, but I'm supposed to be a blessing to others. So see that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Now here it says, "Nation will rise against nation." That word for nation in the Greek, because the Bible was not inspired in English, it was inspired in Greek. That word for nation comes from a word ethnos, which is where we get the word ethnicity from. So ethnicity will rise against ethnicity. Unfortunately, here in the United States, that really exploded in 2020 with the whole George Floyd and the Aubrey case, sorry. And that really exploded to the point to where now we have this CRT, the critical race theory, where it's like reverse prejudice, reverse racism. We are not supposed to be like that. We, as a church, we need to be showing people. We need to be showing people what a united world on the right foundation, from the right principles, from the right values. That's what we need to be showing, is what a united world looks like, what the world is going to look like as Jesus, as the king of the world. He is literally going to be king of the world. And you look at his life and you watch his life, you read about his life, and you see how he dealt with the poor, you see how he dealt with those who were not socially accepted. You get to see how he cared for people, how he cared for people that were in sin. And although he did not condemn them, he gave them the chance to turn from sin. But then, like the lady caught in adultery, she was literally caught in the act of adultery. He told her, don't sin anymore. And then people that he healed, there was a man, I think he healed him of blindness, and he healed the man and he said, don't sin anymore. Don't live a lifestyle of sin. Unfortunately, we live in this flawed human nature that we fight against every day. This is why your personal devotional time is so important. Learning how to get into connect with the Lord on that supernatural level, so God's Spirit can help you to dominate, to submit your human nature, your erroneous, rebellious, wayward human nature. But that's why it's so important, so that way we can show our world, our cities, our towns, our nations, our neighborhoods, what a real perfect united world looks like. So it says nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Now this is kingdom against kingdom is legit. Nation against nation, we think of United States versus China, Russia, things like that. And this is where we start getting into some of the things we've been seeing. There will be famines. What are famines? Famines are food shortages. Famines are where crops aren't growing. Famines are where we are in droughts. So droughts, no rain. No rain, no crops. California, we're notorious for that. For droughts, unfortunately, especially in the last decade or so. And in another video that I'm a work on, I'm gonna talk about climate change from God's perspective, and why there are droughts, why there are wildfires and things like that. Because our world government officials and leaders say that it's because there are too many people on the earth, and that's not what God says. God doesn't say that there are too many people on the earth. God told Abraham, he said, the world is going to be blessed through you, Abraham, and I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven. I'm going to make your descendants as numerous as the sand on the seashore. So you go, go to a beach. Tell me if there's too much sand at the beach. Is there too much sand at the beach? Tell me if there's too many stars in the sky. Or do we need to depopulate the heavens? Do we need to depopulate the outer space, as we now call it? Do we need to depopulate outer space from the stars? Are there too many stars? Whatever energy the stars use. I know there's nuclear fusion, nuclear reactions, and that's what a nuclear reactor is trying to imitate. It's actually trying to imitate the functions of a star in order to produce energy. But are there too many stars in outer space? Is there too much sand at the beach? Because if there's not too much sand at the beach, and if there aren't too many stars in space, then there are not too many people on this earth, according to our Creator. Like, this is why I love God's word so much. This is why I love spending time with him, because these things he helps you to think about. Like, he helps you to think about things that we never would think about on our own. So I would go back, read that in like Genesis chapter 12 on, where God is making these promises to Abraham. But yeah, so when we look at where we at, let's go back. So when we look at this, there will be famines, pestilences. Now, pestilences, let me see. I want to find a version that really, or maybe Maybe I'll go back. Let me close this. But pestilences, if you look at pestilence, it is an older English word for epidemics and pandemics. So, of course, what have we been dealing with since 2020 and really 2019, but globally since 2020? Um, that's why it's called COVID-19. But since 2020, globally, we've been dealing with an epidemic. It started off as an epidemic and now a pandemic, which is pestilence. We've been dealing with COVID-19, and of course, we had other things. We had the swine flu, we had the bird flu, and then, of course, we've had other stuff before that. We've had the mumps, we've had the measles, we've had the Spanish flu, and these things just keep getting worse and worse. Now we're in a global thing. Like that was the thing with diseases, is it keeps getting worse and worse. So there will be famines, there will be pestilences, there will be earthquakes in various places. If we keep up with the news, we see how earthquakes, whether for whatever the reasons, whether just tectonic plates running together or because of volcanoes erupting, says all these are the beginning of sorrows. So this is why I wanted to do this broadcast, because it says all these things that we see, nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines or food shortages, pestilences or pandemics and epidemics, earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. And that's why I wanted to do this, because Jesus himself, our creator, who created himself a human life and lived among us as a human, he says all these are the beginning of sorrows. So unfortunately, for our human nature and our desire for comfort and things like that, which God doesn't, he's not going to punish us necessarily, but because of the weight of sin in the world, we're going to go through these things because of the things that Satan is trying to do. We're going to go through these things. So one of the things I was sharing with my wife a couple of days ago or last week, I was thinking of, throughout this year, I've been praying like, Lord, why did you allow the pandemic to come? Why? Or, because we always say God is in control of everything. And I would say for 99% of things, he is in control. The one thing he is not in control of, that I would dare to say, is my free will. He does not control. I'm not a puppet. I'm not a robot. He does not control my free will. I have to make the choice to work with him or to do my own thing. If I do my own thing, then I'm siding with Satan, because Satan decided to do his own thing. Lucifer, the fallen angel, read about him in Ezekiel chapter 28, Isaiah 14. Either I do what my king wants, the person I'm claiming is king, Jesus Christ, and the king has total authority, he has total dominance, it's his way or the highway. Or I do the things that that Satan wants to do, which is just do what you want to do, And so you read about him, and we're going to try to hit on that briefly, because I'm already an hour into this. But live streams that I'm finding on YouTube are kind of long. So we figure out, who do we want? What king are we going to submit to? Man, I think my little focus came off. But let's go back. Let me put my focus on my phone so I don't get no interruptions or any more interruptions. But when we look at this, we have to figure out, what is it? Who are we siding with? And this is why having God's Spirit, knowing by experience how real Jesus is, learning how to cultivate that atmosphere at home, learning how to cultivate that atmosphere that, if you can find another word for atmosphere, or another word that can rightly convey what I'm trying to say, I'm sure most of y'all know what I'm saying, but that the atmosphere, you walk into a house and there's an atmosphere there. You walk into a job, there's an atmosphere there. You walk into a place where two people were just arguing and they shut up because you walk into the room, there's an atmosphere there, and it's thick as ever, and you're like, what's going on here? So in our personal prayer time, we want to learn how to praise and worship just like we do in service, and learn how to cultivate that. And the more consistently you do it, the easier it becomes. Now, one of the things I've learned is you can be on a good flow of hitting your prayer time, getting up, spending that time with the Lord. You start transitioning from the natural into the supernatural, and then something happens. You go to bed late, you wake up late, and you break that flow. You break the flow, and what happens is, and this is just kind of give some insights what I've learned over the last few years. Um, is you break the flow, and so you got to build the flow back up, because at that point your human nature is kind of trying to get that dominance back. So you got to don't get discouraged if you get a flow going, and it can be discouraging, but I'm going to encourage you, don't get discouraged, because you can fix the flow. All you got to do is go back, do what you were doing before, and you're going to face opposition spiritually, supernaturally. You're going to face opposition to supernatural forces against us. They're going to work through people in our lives that are going to aggravate us, work in situations that are taking us away from our time in prayer, taking us away from going to bed at a good time to wake up. If Satan can distract you, he's going to distract you, because you allowing the Lord to work through you, you are the biggest threat to his kingdom. And his kingdom is made up of people. Just like God's kingdom is made up of people. There's two aspects to a kingdom. There's the people the king rules over, and there's the land that the king rules over. Right now, Jesus is focusing on the people. He's getting the people ready. So when he takes over the land, the earth, we're ready, and he has his government officials prepared to help him rule the world. So, so learn how to cultivate that atmosphere in personal praise, personal worship, learning how to pour your heart out, learning how to. I was talking to somebody about this a couple of days ago. Is learning how to get past that inhibition of your flesh. Some of us, maybe we have lived a life outside of living for Jesus, and so I know for myself, just to be honest and transparent, partied, drank, uh, did some smoking while I was in high school. And so one of the things you find out, if you've never done these things, praise God, don't ever try them. You don't need to. The Holy Ghost is way better than anything that these things could ever provide, any experiences. And actually messing with those things could have opened us up to some very demonic things. For some of us, maybe they did. But when you drink and you're smoking, for those of us who know, there's this wall of inhibition that is lowered, and we just start saying stuff we normally wouldn't say. We start saying things that we normally wouldn't do. We start doing, and so that's something on the inside that drugs and alcohol does to us. And this is part of why Paul talks about not, and God talks about it in the law. He talks about not partaking with sorcery, not partaking in necromancy, not partaking of witchcraft, not partaking of like astrology versus astronomy. Astronomy is the study of the stars. Astrology is kind of like working with the stars to tell the future. That's two different things. Tarot cards, all these things. So he tells us not to do those things, because a lot of times what you have to do in order to connect is sometimes you got to take drugs. If you ever read up on Satanists, actually look up a guy named John Ramirez. He's not apostolic. He is spirit-filled from what I understand, but he's an ex-Satanist. Look him up on YouTube, and he talks about those things, how they would take drugs and different things. Look up people who are part of New Age and who are now Christians of whatever sort, and see the things that they had to do in order to stay connected to their spirit guides or their gods. Depending on the belief system, they characterize them in different ways. But when you learn how to transition from the flesh to the spirit, you do it through praise and worship, because when you sing a song and your heart is in it, that inhibition comes down, because you have now allowed your soul, your spirit to express itself. You're not conscious, like so self-conscious of things. So that's the power of praise and worship, is it helps you to transition from one dimension, the natural dimension, to the supernatural. So yeah, so like I was saying, I can ramble for days. Unfortunately for some that don't care for rambling. But so as he says, all these are the beginning of sorrows. So I know we like to be comfortable, but Jesus himself did not live a comfortable life. If the king did not live a comfortable life, I cannot expect to allow if I cannot expect to live a comfortable life in some regards, perhaps for some in many regards. In my own ways, I try not to live a comfortable life. I like to maintain a level of self-discomfort, prayer, waking up early, sometimes going to bed a little later than need be, fasting. Fasting is a big thing for me because it has helped me so much to keep my flesh under control. If you're medically able to fast, if you're not, keep praying until the Lord changes your medical situation or see what he wants you to do. So all these are the beginning of sorrows. And then verse 9, it says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Now, for myself, I feel like we've as of 2021, we have really stepped into these verses right here. They will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you. We obviously here in America, we're not being killed yet, but it says you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Then many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. And so we want to be careful, because it says many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. This is why we have to be careful. We have to be careful. We want to be careful. So we look at San Francisco. We look at Los Angeles. We look at, I want to see if I can pull something up for you guys on YouTube. San Francisco. I'm gonna pull something up real quick, and I'm sure many of us have seen it, but let me see. I'm gonna pull it up for you guys on YouTube real quick. Let me put my earpiece in so I can hear what y'all are hearing. Let me see. I'm gonna adjust this real quick. Command. Let me see what y'all need to see. Cool. I'll try that. All right, let me put this audio on for you guys. Hopefully there's not too much of an echo.
Of looters storming and ransacking high-end stores in the San Francisco area, and they appear to be organized. It happened 3 days in a row: Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Here's video at Nordstrom where a wave of thieves struck at the same time. Police say it was clearly a planned event, and one store employee was even pepper sprayed. Most of the suspects escaped. CNBC's Kate Rogers is on the ground in San Francisco covering the smash and grab crime spree.
This isn't a flash mob, it's a flash rob. A string of retail thefts hitting different stores in San Francisco and Walnut Creek this weekend as the holiday shopping season gets into full swing, causing panic and mayhem amongst shoppers. Nordstrom in Walnut Creek blocked by 25 cars as many as 80 people ran in, some with crowbars, making off with armfuls of goods, according to onlookers. The crime over within a minute. And in San Francisco, 8 stores, including high-end luxury shops like Louis Vuitton, were looted and vandalized. The crime over to stop them from getting away. Police calling the thefts orchestrated.
There's no doubt in my mind that this was not unplanned. Their plan was to overwhelm us.
The total amount of damage and merchandise stolen still under investigation. Mayor London Breed expressing her frustration over retail thefts in the city, calling the incident horrible.
We can't continue to allow people to freely flow in and out of this city, commit these acts, and get away with it.
The busy shopping district is attempting to stage a comeback after being ravaged by the pandemic. And San Francisco facing closures of major drugstores, Walgreens and CVS, as retail theft continues to plague the city. District Attorney Chesa Boudin promising felony charges for those involved, but he's facing trials of his own, a recall effort next summer as critics like former prosecutor and colleague Brooke Jenkins saying he's soft on shoplifting.
The tone in San Francisco and Chase's administration is that there will be no accountability for these types of crimes. And so if that's the case, then individuals feel as though this type of action simply has no consequence.
So far, nearly a dozen arrests have been made between the Union Square and Walnut Creek lootings. We're here in Union Square tonight, Kelly. You can see it's a very busy shopping area. Police say they're still investigating if those two incidents are related.
And Kate, San Francisco is not the only city seeing some of these high-end retail robberies, right?
That's certainly true. Take a look at this video, a similar scene in Oak Brook, Illinois, over the last week. That's west of Chicago. This was also in a Louis Vuitton store. The retailer says it has no comment on either incident, but police say nearly $120,000 in merchandise was stolen, and they are still looking for suspects. Kelly.
Kate Rogers reporting tonight. Kate, thanks.
Super sad. Super sad. But what did the Lord say? Let me get back to my Bible on here. He said, because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. But he says, he who endures to the end will be saved. And so we look at what's going on in our world here in our nation. I never thought I would see this type of stuff happening here in the States. But we're just seeing exactly what Jesus told us was going to happen. He foretold us that these things were going to happen. And then we look at, let me go to, let me see, Luke, where do I want to go? Luke 17. Coming of the kingdom. So this is a similar. This is Luke telling a different audience about the same thing that Matthew told his audience about. Matthew was writing to Jewish believers and people, I'm sure, that they were trying to convince. Here, Luke is talking to he's talking to a man named Theophilus, Greek-minded guy, and anybody who has a similar way of thinking, such as, or worldview, such as Theophilus. And so he says, now when he was asked by the Pharisees when the kingdom of God would come, it says, he answered with observation, the kingdom of God does not come with observation, nor will they say, see here or see there. For the kingdom of God is within you. God's kingdom, his rule, his reign first starts in our lives. And then he talks about how it says, then he says to his disciples, the days will come when you will desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man, talking about Jesus. That was how he referenced himself in his human nature. And you will not see it. And they will say to you, look here or look there. Do not go after them or follow them. We have to be careful who we're listening to. For as the lightning that flashes out of one part of under the heaven shines to another part under the heaven, so also the Son of Man will be in his day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation. Now, it says, now as it was in the days of Noah, so will be in the days of the Son of Man. So you go back, you read the days of Noah, or Genesis chapter 6. It says that it was wicked exceedingly. Let's jump over there real quick. In Genesis 6. It says, now it came to pass when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, the daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore them children. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Then, now here's where we talk about the days of Noah. I'm sure all this encompasses it, but what we're seeing right now. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace. God has always been gracious. God was gracious back in the garden when he did not strike down Adam and Eve, but he knew that was going to happen. But he was gracious. He's always been gracious. So it says, but Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Why did he find grace in God's sight? It says, this is the genealogy of Noah. Noah was a just man. He was upright according to what God says is upright. This flowed from who he was. He wanted to do right. He treated people right. He loved people, and loving people doesn't mean you cater. Loving people means doing what's right and holding them to what is right. God loves us with that same love. He holds us up to the standard of what is right and expects us to imitate him, to live like him. It needs to flow from the inside out. That's why we need the Holy Spirit. Noah was a just man, perfect in his generations. Noah walked with God. When it says perfect in his generations, usually when it's referring to humans, that means his character. If he did something wrong, he apologized. He turned back to God. He apologized to God, turned from whatever direction he was going morally, turned back to the way he needed to go. If he wronged somebody, he apologized to them, sought to fix the relationship. And then, of course, just striving to live upright as best as we are taught according to what God says is right and what God has helped us to understand is right. So we see in Luke, we've seen that Jesus said it was going to be like the days of Noah. Let me see. Let's go back to that. I'm in Luke 21. I need to be in 17. Drop down. So it says, the days will come when you desire to see one of the days of the Son of Man. Verse 26. As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Now, this is one of the things that threw me for a loop and kind of messed me up when I was when I was listening to my coworkers one day. It says, they ate, they drank, they married wives, they were giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. The thing that messed me up was just hearing that people were, they're trying to go about life regularly, like nothing's wrong, trying to live it regularly, but we need to be the ones sharing this stuff with them. And then it says, likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so, it will be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So all we got to do is go back, look at Genesis 19. I had to fact check myself, make sure I was in the right place. It says in Genesis 19, now the two angels came to Sodom. You got to go back, read chapter 18 to see where they came from. They were with God and with Abraham. The angels were God's escorts essentially, and they spent time fellowshipping with Abraham. Now the two angels came in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face to the ground. And he said, "Hear now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." They said, "No, but we will spend the night in the open square." But he insisted strongly, so that they turned into him and entered the house. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now here's the part with Lot. It says, "Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. And they called to Lot and said to him, 'Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us that we may know them carnally,'" talking about having relations with them. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, "Please, my brethren or brothers, do not do so wickedly. See now, I have two daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Not only do nothing to these men, since it is this reason they have come under the shadow of my roof." And they said, "Stand back." Then they said, "This one came in here to stay, and he keeps acting as a judge." This is what happens when we start compromising and we're trying to be like everybody else. "Now we will deal worse with you than with them." So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. So look, it says that they were going to deal worse with Lot than they were going to do. Like, I can only, like, what kind of depravity, like, where does your mind have to be? Where does your mind, where it's like you've allowed your human nature to just be this beast of a monster, to where you're like, I just want to fulfill my pleasure. Like, that blows my mind. I just reading this, it says, "We will deal worse with you than with them." And what was it? They said they wanted to know. Verse 5, it says, "And they wanted, where the men who came to you tonight, bring them out to us, so that we may know them carnally." But know them, that's a Hebrew Middle Eastern way of saying that we may have relations with them. And then to say, we're going to deal worse with you. Let me see. "Now we will deal worse with you than with them." That's some deep, dark stuff. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. So just to see where these things are at, just is kind of crazy. Let me see. To kind of see where these things are, where we're at, is crazy. And the thing is, I used to read these things and I'm like, I don't see it yet. The Lord saved me back in 2009. And I'm like, I don't see it yet. And then I started seeing it with some of my loved ones. And I'm like, okay, but it's not on the societal scale. And then 2 administrations ago, the United States, or the Supreme Court, passed that ruling when it came to gay marriage. And then we started seeing the aggressiveness of the LGBT movement. And now they have where they're trying to legitimize what they're calling MAPS, minor attracted persons. And I knew about this back in 2019, where San Diego State here in California, they were doing lectures on this. I have the article in one of my apps. But go look that up. Go look up minor attracted persons and non-offending minor attracted persons if you have not heard about it. So it says, likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, and they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. So Jesus talks about how bad it is going to be morally, just all around horrible. And we see like this thing is just getting worse and worse. So when we talk about, so we see that when it comes to like that news report, when it comes to I'm gonna try to pull up where am I at? Ezekiel 38. When it comes to lawlessness, Jesus talked about lawlessness. We've seen that video, how just a smash and grab and just anything that we see on the news in general, but just to see such lawlessness on such a grand and like you can't stop them. And it's because you look at what people like Chesapeake has done. He's lightened up on crime. When we start legalizing drugs and different things, what do we think is going to happen? Like everything's just going to be okay. People are going to kick back and chill and smoke their weed and eat their food because they're hungry, get the munchies. Like, you know, so I know, I don't know if Alex is still on here, but I don't know if he's seen any of my other pictures. Let me see if I can pull them up. I don't even have a link to my pictures on my thing. Let me see where are my favorites at. And anybody else who might watch this later on, you can kind of see where I'm from, who I am. Where are my favorites? Okay, my favorites. You can go check out my personal Facebook page. I want to see if I can pull this up. Where's my pictures at? Nope, not that picture, not those pictures. So if I talk a little crazy sometimes, you'll be able to see why. Let me see. Zoom, internet, nope. PowerPoint. Let me so for anybody, this is me right here with the yellow shirt on. That's me. And so when I talk a little crazy or talk a little out of pocket, maybe not like a typical Pentecostal or apostolic guy, thanks, Alex. But if you see me just kind of talk, you see me kind of almost say crazy, not vulgar, nothing like that. But if you anybody else that if you guys ever hear me kind of talk little differently, you'll see why. That's me. That was me in high school. Cornrows. That was me. My graduation picture, 2003. Yeah, I don't know if I have any of my military pictures on here, but yeah, you get to. Oh, let me see. There's another one. There's another one I want to show. And then that's me here in the lower left corner with the white on. So if you just, I need to do another updated testimony video just so people kind of see where I come from and who I am and what the Lord has done, because He brings some changes. Yeah, so that way who you you kind of see where I'm coming from, Alex, and my wife and sister Maricela, they know a bit more about me, but yeah. So when it comes to when it just comes to where we're at. Our world is absolutely crazy. And so when we see people like Chesapeake Dean, the district attorney of San Francisco, what do you expect? It's like, what do you expect to happen? And so one of the things I wanted to talk about, let me see, we'll go back to the Bible because I want to talk about the whole Iran thing. So biblically, Iran is Persia. Let me see, is Persia in this passage? Let me see. So we'll talk about this real quick. It says, this is Ezekiel 38, just talking about Gog and Magog. And so you can kind of look this up in some Bible dictionaries too. It says, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog. When you go back to, like, you look in a Bible dictionary, Gog and Magog are seen as uh, Russia, the area of Russia. It says the prince of Rosh. Rosh is modern day Russia. Meshech right here is modern day Moscow. And then there's actually an area called Tobolsk in Russia. And I think there's a river called like the Tobolsky River. So this is pretty well documented for quote unquote conservative Christians biblically that this is modern day Russia in that area. And it talks about how Russia is going to come against Israel. And so this is why keeping our eyes on Russia and Israel are very very important. So we'll kind of read through this. It says, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. Prophesy against them and say, thus says the Lord God, behold, I am against you, O Gog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal. I will turn you around, put hooks into your jaws, and lead you out with all your army, horses, and horsemen, all splendidly clothed, a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Iran changed its name from Persia, I think in the early 20th century. And so it says Persia, we talked about Ethiopia and Libya are with them. These are modern day countries. So Persia is Iran. Ethiopia, we talked about, was in the news. Libya, of course, they had the Arab Spring a few years ago, so we'll see how they start developing into all this, are with them. All of them with shield and helmet, talking about their army. Gomer and all its troops, the house of Togarmah from the far north and all its troops. Togarmah, I think, was kind of like ancient Greece area. So European Union, that's kind of the modern day area. Many people are with you. Prepare yourself and be ready, you and all your companies that are gathered about you, and be on guard after them. After many days you will be visited. In the latter years you will come into the land of those brought back from the sword and gathered from many people on the mountains of Israel, which had long been desolate. They were brought out of the nations, and now all of them dwell safely. You will ascend, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud, and you and all your troops and many peoples with you. So this is where Iran comes into play. We need to keep our eyes on what is going on with Iran, what is going on with Russia. And like I said, just talking about Russian aggression, Iranian aggression. China is not so much mentioned. Usually what people identify as China is the red dragon in Revelation chapter 13, but chapter 12 clearly identifies identifies the dragon as Satan and the devil. And so we want to just be, let me see, let's go there real quick. Revelation 12. And so here we talk about a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, just to clarify that the red dragon is not Russia. Verse 3 says, I saw another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. His tail drew a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth to devour her child as soon as it was born. This is a supernatural. John is seeing this in the dimension of the spirit or the supernatural. You can see things in the supernatural that you can't see in the natural. So visions, dreams, things like that. She bore a male child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up to God and his throne. Then the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has prepared a place by God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. That's 3.5 years. And war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought. So obviously Michael, the archangel, and his angels are, this is talking about the dragon. The dragon obviously cannot be China, because it's saying that he's fighting with Michael, and the dragon and his angels fought, but they did not prevail, nor was a place found for them in heaven any longer. So the great red dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. He was cast to the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So if anybody ever asks you what the dragon is, just take them to this verse. And then when you go to chapter 13, and it's talking, because most people just jump to chapter 13, and it says, "Then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, just like the dragon, and on his heads 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear," and these are representative of different nations that unite, at least in a governmental sense. "And his mouth was like the mouth of a lion." Go back and read Daniel 7, and you can kind of see the same figure, but they're all separate nations at the time. And then it says, "And his mouth was like the mouth of a lion." Right here, next portion, it says, "The dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority." So it says the dragon empowers this beast, which has which was like a leopard. So the body is like a leopard, the feet are like the feet of a bear, and his mouth is like the mouth of a lion. The dragon, or Satan, gives him his power, his throne, and great authority. Daniel 7 breaks these animals down and tells us that in verse 13 or 14 of Daniel 7, it tells us that these beasts represent kingdoms, and this might be vice versa. Actually, let me just go there. That's always the easiest for me. I hate misquoting scripture. It's one of my things. If I can paraphrase it, great. If I can't, I'm going to find it. So it says, verse 7, "I saw in the night visions let me go up because we missed a beast." It says, "I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each one different from another. The first was like a lion." So obviously we read chapter 13 in Revelation, and it's depicting these beasts. It says the first was like a lion. The one in Revelation 13 had the mouth like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. "I watched till its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on his back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it." So I just let the Lord teach us what he wants to teach us. "After this I saw in the night visions, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns." So the beast in Revelation has 7 heads, 10 horns. Where do the 7 heads come from? So here, let me see, verse 3, verse 4 says the first was like a lion. That's 1 head. You drop down to verse 5, you got another animal like a bear. That's 2 heads. You have, and the heads represent the leadership, of course. Raised up on one side, verse 6, it says another like a leopard. It had 4 wings on its back. And it says this beast had 4 heads. So you add 4 to 2, you got 6, right? You just everyday math. And then it says, "I saw in the night visions a 4th beast." So 2 plus 4 of the leopard plus this 4th beast it only doesn't mention any extra heads, so you have 7 heads. And then it says that it had 10 horns, just like the beast in Revelation 13, and just like the dragon. The dragon in Revelation 12 had 7 heads and 10 horns. And so when we get down to, let me see, So here we get the interpretation starting in verse 15. See, and this is why kind of talking about hermeneutics, talking about learning how to take things out of God's word according to how the Lord reveals it. We never have to interpret it. We just have to see where God gave the interpretation. It says, I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near to one of those who stood by and asked him, let me see, he says, I asked him the truth of all this. So what does he do? So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. I don't have to interpret it. Nobody has to interpret it. Peter said in 2 Peter, he said that prophecy is given by God and it's not up to private interpretation. I don't have to interpret this. God gives us the interpretation. He made known to me the interpretation of these things. So 17, it says, those great beasts, which are four kings which arise out of the earth. And then, and this is a totally different topic, but it says the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever. That's a Bible study I want to do at length and then do some shorter form. So 17 says those great beasts which are four kings which arise out of the earth. And then it says, I wish to know the truth of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and snails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet, and the 10 horns that were on its head. And another horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely the horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, and whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints and prevailing against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. That's the goal, is to make it into the kingdom so we can possess the kingdom. But what does he say right here in verse 23? It says the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth and trample it and break it in pieces. So quite simply, verse 23, the fourth beast is representative of the king, verse 17, as we've seen, but also of the kingdom, or the nation, as we would say in this day. The fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom. So we don't have to interpret it. God gives us the interpretation. So verse 17 says, those great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth. And then verse 23 says, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom. So when we look at Revelation 13, we don't have to try to interpret it for ourselves. God has already given us the interpretation. I stood on the sand, saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. The beast which I saw was like a leopard, which we seen. His feet were like the feet of a bear, which we seen. The mouth like the mouth of a lion, which we seen. But we don't see the wings of either birds on the backs. It says the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. So as we see, the beast from Revelation, or from Daniel 7, which represented the leadership, the kings, and their kingdoms or their nations. So you ever want to break that down for people, you're more than welcome to. It says they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped, and this is where I'm going to end. They worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who was able to make war with him? So verse 4, they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And then, of course, later on in this chapter, you got the beast from the earth, which is another body of people, which it says you had the lamb that comes up. It has 2 horns, and it spoke like a dragon. It looks like Jesus, the Lamb of God, has 2 horns like a lamb, and it spoke like a dragon, speaks like the devil. So, or it's inspired to speak like the devil. And what did Jesus say? He said, my words the words that you hear are not mine, but they are his who sent me. The Father dwelt in Jesus. This lamb has a different spirit. This lamb has a dragon, speaks like the dragon. So it says he performs great signs so that even fire, he makes fire to come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. So it's not necessarily talking about the Antichrist himself, but the government figure. Brother Irvin Baxter from End Time Ministries has great teachings on this. He was granted to give power, to give breath to the image of the beast, that he should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And here we go. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, slave and free, to receive a mark on their right hand and on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. So if you go back and you look at other countries right now, even here in the States in New York, there are a lot of people that they cannot do things because they are not taking this medication that is being forced upon us. And so when we look at what the Lord said, he said that people who do not take this mark, that they will not be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the number of his name. So what is going on? We are being told that if we don't do one thing, that we can't do another thing. We can't meet our basic needs because we won't compromise. Now, if you feel comfortable taking the medication for personal conscious and health reasons, that's our choice. And of course, I'm not going to bash anybody for doing it, but just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. That's my big thing, is doing it for the right reasons. So what does 2022 have in store for us? It looks like 2022, according to Jesus, is just going to continue the snowball effect of just gaining ground and getting bigger and bigger. But this is the greatest time to live in, because as we as spirit-filled believers, Pentecostals, whatever the label is, because those in China, some of them don't label themselves, but they're still spirit-filled. Some of them, I'm not sure if they baptize in Jesus' name, but I know they're apostolic Pentecostals in China as well, in the underground church. This is the greatest time, one of the greatest times we could live in. The first century and the 21st century. We are, in my mind, literally a 21st first century church, or we're living in first century circumstances in the first century. Paganism is rising back up. Spirituality of different belief systems is rising back up. Witchcraft is on the rise. All these other spiritual practices are on the rise. But us as Pentecostal apostolic believers, if we will keep the balance of spirit and truth, we are going to be a powerhouse in 2022. But it starts with our personal devotion. It starts with our corporate devotion. When we come together, being of one heart, of one mind, of one accord, show up. I would show up early, whatever, Alex, wherever, if it's service at CLC or your home church, show up, spend time in prayer. Anybody who will be watching this, learn how to meld together with the body, and be the fire starter, be the passionate one, be the one that people look to and wonder why we're so crazy, but showing them by example, and maybe praying with them, working on getting mentoring people, and just sharing, like praying with them, like meet me here, we'll pray together, we'll learn how to get into the spirit, we'll learn how to get in contact with God, and then going out, teach Bible studies, all those things. Do something like the online space. Everybody's online ever since last year. So 2020 for me is going to be an exciting year. It's going to have its challenges. It's going to have its frustrations, but man, I'm excited for it. I'm super excited. in spite of all that's going on. So thank you guys for tuning in. Sister Maricela, Alex, my wife, anybody who tunes in later, you can connect with me. I'll leave my social media stuff down below. Leave some comments and share, like it, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I'll go back and put timestamps so you can kind of skip around. But thank you guys for tuning in. Looking forward to 2020. Looking forward to working with the saints. Looking forward to working with our pastors, our bishops, our leadership, and looking forward to helping the rest of Christianity, those who want to be right with God, who are outside of our denomination, so to say. Looking forward to teaching them what the apostles taught. Looking forward to teaching them what Jesus taught the apostles, what the apostles taught new disciples, and learning how to be, I don't know if any of us are familiar with the MiFi. It's called like a personal hotspot, or like now we have like personal hotspots on our phones. But learning how to be that hotspot for the Lord, that wherever we go, the Lord can lead us, guide us. He can draw people to us. And it starts with our personal devotion. So with that, God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Leave me comments and let me know what your expectations are for 2022, what it is you desire to see accomplished, what you want to see the Lord do in 2022 for the kingdom, what your passions are, what it is you want to do for the kingdom, because he's created us for a purpose and people need us to fulfill our purpose.